Hi, everyone, and welcome into the Rochester Press Box. I'm Bill Pucko, the voice of reason, between two of Rochester morning radio giants.
Thank you. We're killing it.
You gotta listen to the pregame with these guys talking about the business, and I feel terribly left out.
No,
Spence, how you doing?
I'm doing great. You know, it's interesting. The draft has turned into what happens to certain people when they find out that they're drafted and all the social media stuff that happens afterwards, other than the person that just got drafted.
God, you polluted as soon as you bring up social media. We're back in candy stripes.
Okay, all right.
Big week for that.
Yeah, the Amerks need a win. Now, as we're taping this, it's going to be over by the time this airs. So last time I wore it, they got the 2 games they needed. I'm wearing it this week, and it's either going to be celebratory or a
jinx.
Swan song on the
game
Amerks
is Sunday.
season. Yeah.
Right?
Is it Sunday?
Yeah.
All right, take back what I said. I thought it was Saturday. All right, let's go Amerks.
No, because part of their show is
yes!
let's get a supporting cast out of the series.
Bad start already.
Hey, you know so I'm going to talk playoffs, NBA, NHL.
Yeah.
God, they've just been wild. Just throw it out there. The NBA, I think, has got a representative from every seed number, and the Stanley Cup hockey is typically ridiculous.
Well, I'm upset the Rangers are out, but they are what they are, and they didn't show up in Game 7. That's their fault. I will go, though, to the NBA, which is interesting. It's kind of sad to see what's happening in the NBA with all of the big stars really getting hurt. Giannis was out for a while. Jimmy Butler with this ankle thing for a minute. Now you've got the Chris Paul story. Embiid was out for a game or so. So it's almost like I'm not quite sure what's going to happen because the healthiest team is going to survive here if they're able to do so. Now, you can't count the Warriors out.
So much for load management, right? You got all this stuff. You spent the whole year resting these guys so they'd be healthy for the playoffs, and none of them are healthy.
And it's interesting you bring that up with load management because Kawhi Leonard got hurt and all these other different things. So I'm not quite sure what to really make of this. Even watching the Knicks Heat game in Game 2, a couple of their role players started getting hurt as well. So I'm not quite sure what to make of this. How healthy you are and how much team chemistry can bond with your star player out is going to be interesting. You saw Harden step up very much so in the Philadelphia series with Boston. You saw some of the other Knicks players come back from injury in Randall. So this is going to be, I'm not quite sure what to make of all of these injuries.
I mean, look, the bottom line is this. A bench is always important. You need a bench to win to get to the NBA Finals, win a championship. This year more than ever. And I think what we're seeing is with these injuries, you know, you said that the NBA playoffs are chaos, not just because of injuries, but because it all makes logical sense, right? Like the Lakers beating Memphis makes logical sense. They caught them at the right time with the right kind of chaos, and this Lakers team is a good team. What we're seeing now is the decline of the super team, right? Like you're seeing again what happens when you spread talent evenly throughout a league. You know, those top 3 seeds in each conference don't have 3 major players on each of them. I love this. It reminds me of watching the NBA playoffs 15 years ago.
Yeah, and which brings us to super teams. It brings us to the NHL and the Stanley Cup playoffs, which has always been a bone of contention with me. It's like, why even have a regular season? Roll them out there, flip a coin. I invested in this. It's the first time all year that I've watched hockey on TV, and I watched every game of the Bruins series.
Okay.
And I am done with it.
Oh, I forgot. That's why, because you're all sad because your Bruins lost.
That's part of it. But this is a team that lost in a series to a team that's 47 points. It's inferior in the regular season.
Sure.
And you go back to Tampa Bay, which is still the ultimate example, you know, record setting a few years ago, swept in the first round. Stanley Cup hockey is just ridiculous.
I disagree. Now, I understand why someone who doesn't watch hockey on a regular basis may feel that way, but this is logical. What happened with the Bruins and the Panthers? Last year, the Panthers were the President's Trophy winners. They were the best team in the NHL in the regular season. They lost in the second round.
But they can't be a negative.
Here's the numbers that are being hidden. 1, nobody scored more goals than the Florida Panthers from the trade deadline to now, including the Boston Bruins. 2, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. The question mark about the Boston Bruins wasn't going to be the top 6 forwards in the defensive pair. They had great veteran leadership and experience all the way throughout. Linus Ullmark, former Sabres goalie, has not made a deep playoff run with the Bruins. And the coaching made terrible mistakes going back and forth between him and the backup there. The Panthers got tougher. The Panthers got better. At the trade deadline, Boston did everything they could to get to the finish line playing as hard as they could. They ran out of gas and they didn't have the experience in net. That's what happens.
This really brings us back to a discussion about shortening seasons in the regular season. The same argument's going on in the NBA where there are a lot of people that believe the Warriors, how could they be this good? Well, they got healthy. They were able to put everything together. They got into the playoffs. They're a dangerous team. And
they loafed through the regular season and get rewarded for that.
But that's the interesting part about it. How many different players are like, we're going to go all the way. We're going to go hard. And look at where that got Anthony Edwards from the Timberwolves. I mean, you run out of gas, like Duffy just said. And then, oh, by the way, you've got to play another month of basketball for the 8 teams that are still remaining.
And one step further, even in that point, right? You say that Golden State loafed through the regular season and ended up winning because they're more talented. I would make the argument they completely changed the way they were playing after that Draymond suspension, right? And that's when everything changed in the first round. A 2-0 lead. Draymond goes. He knows he's got to chill out, not affect the team in a negative way. That might have been the catalyst for them winning. Everything makes sense when you look at it 1,000 feet above.
Regular season's too long, I think, for a lot of sports teams.
I'm still out on
NHL.
Stanley Cup hockey.
Okay, well,
And
I'll
you can
watch
blame it on the Boston thing.
Just
if you
wait
want.
till the playoffs like I do and watch. That's what I do.
This is the Rochester Press Box, and we're talking Buffalo Bills next.
I have some travel books, Volume 1, Volume 2. You'll be able to get one of these books for free when you buy the new Volume 2 for only $14.95. Contact me at MikeTheGetawayGuy@gmail.com.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. Our Buffalo Bills segment is brought to you by Ralph Honda. For 3 generations, celebrating 50 years as New York's first and oldest Honda dealer. Visit Ralph Honda today. Find out how we do Honda right at ralphhonda.com. Well, let's get the elephant out of the room first. Last week, you were an impassioned defender of the Buffalo Bills in the upcoming season against the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers. And you were like our lightning rod for a lot of Jet fans that came out of nowhere. Just briefly address those people.
Oh, what, you mean the people that weren't here for the last 5 years that all of a sudden are yelling at me? Wow.
50 years.
Well, hold on, let me look out the window. Oh, the weather's pretty fair now all of a sudden, isn't it? Why don't you come talk to me in November when everything goes down? By the way, big receiver signing for the Jets this week, too, because if there's one offense you want to replicate if you're the Jets, it's the 2022 Packers offense. But no, I'm
or
wrong,
actually
guys.
the 2019 Packers offense. Randall Cobb, right?
Yeah, great
All
way
right.
to go.
So the draft. What's your overall feeling about what Buffalo did in the draft?
I don't know how to feel about it. Look, I mean, we should have seen something like this coming. Don't start shaking your head.
Not good. That's how you should feel. You should not feel good.
You'll have your chance.
He is listed. Dalton Kincaid, first round pick, is listed as a tight end. The Bills went up to go get him. As a tight end, yes, I understand why that's a confusing pick. But from what I understand, he's more of a slot receiver than he is a tight end. And it gives you the ability to run 12 personnel, 2 tight end stuff that the Bills have been trying for years. They went out and signed Tyler Kroft a couple of years ago. That didn't work out. They signed O.J. Howard in the offseason thinking he would be that guy. That didn't work out. The Bills want to run this offense. They haven't had the personnel. Now, with a first-round pick and a legitimate tight end in Dawson Knox, you are going to be a matchup nightmare if the kid can play coming out of the gate.
And listen, when I first thought about this, I thought to myself, this is not the pick for the Bills. But then you have to realize you're in an arms race right now. You thought Lamar Jackson was going to leave the AFC. He stays in the AFC with Baltimore. Now you've got all of these good. You got Aaron Rodgers coming over. This is going to be a shootout in the AFC, and you need a lot of weapons. So at first, when I saw the draft pick, I was like, come on, you need to upgrade on defense. But then I thought about it for a minute. That's where the NFL is going right now. You need to have guys available, 2 to 3 tight ends, 2 to 3 running backs, 2 to 3, 4, 5 receivers. This is going to be a shootout in the AFC, and it's going to be fun to watch.
My thing came out is philosophically, this is supposed to be a strong draft for tight ends or a deep draft tight ends. So that's the one position you don't have to trade up to get. That worries me, but it was the same way when now the name escapes me, the wide receiver draft that Odell Beckham was in.
Yes.
The Bills traded up.
Sammy Watkins.
Then took Sammy Watkins. It's the same kind of thing. You're going to be able to get your tight end. Why move up to get him? I mean, is he that special?
I think it's because they don't see him as a tight end. I mean, I think that's what this is. And look, I did not like I liked the player. I didn't like the pick. And because I don't like the pick, it means the pick is going to be brilliant. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer because every pick I'm like, what are you doing?
Why do you like the pick?
Because of exactly what you're saying, right? Like, he's an amazing player, but of all the gaps that you had on this team, with a middle linebacker being one of them, offensive line, which they addressed in the second round, wide receiver potentially in the first round, although there was that 4 wide receiver run right before the Bills ended up on the clock, it didn't make sense to me. But if the plan is to use him as a straight-up receiver, it makes sense.
Latavius Murray, do anything for you?
Not really, but I'm just.
How about that, guys?
Not really. But I am shocked that Duffy looked at this as a Bills fan with actually understanding what the Bills are doing here. You're not happy with the pick, but really, did you really think your first round pick was going to be that big of an impact on your offense or your defense
Well, it couldn't
this
be
year?
at 27, right?
Well, no, I mean, it could. Well, first of all, it ended up being 25. The word was once it got to 20, the Bills were ready to make a move and go up and get somebody. To your point about impact, traditionally, rookie tight ends, I think they only average like 350 yards and 2 touchdowns a season.
Yeah.
But, hey, man, Josh Allen wasn't supposed to make it, and he was going to be terrible, and Stephon Diggs wasn't going to work in that
Do
offense.
you believe, though, you said it about a week ago, that they take the best player available. Do you think that was the best player available?
Yes, the only explanation is that's why they took him there, is because he was the best player available. Why? What should they have done, Tariq?
I don't know, draft defense. You know you need it. And you got a defensive coach, and you know
You just said it's an arms race.
Yeah, it
And
is.
they've been drafting defense in the first top 3 rounds nonstop for the last 4 years. And they keep getting outscored when it becomes the most important games.
Our Buffalo Bills segment brought to you by Ralph Honda. Like it or not is next.
Draft what you know.
Here's the Press Box Trivia question brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road.
Hey, come on along for the ride. Mike O'Brien, your getaway guy. Today I'm becoming one with nature. I've got some great trails for you and the whole family. Look for the Getaway Guy on Facebook.
Here's the Press Box Trivia answer brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. A Like It or Not segment brought to you by Sport Clips, where the MVP experience is better than ever. Sport Clips, the pros in men's hair. No appointments are needed. Stop by a Rochester location today. Tariq, like it or not, the rest of the NFL draft, what impressed you?
Rest of it, none of it. I mean, literally,
None of it.
none of the rest of the draft, other than Thursday night, which was amazing, impressed me. I mean, you could look at Will Levis, and you can look at that sort of story. As soon as he walks through the door after not being drafted day one, he basically walks through the door and they gets drafted. And so we'll wait and see where his career is going.
Did he come back for the second day?
I don't think so.
I
think he went home after the first day, but it's not. All I know is that he was in his house when he got the call, and I felt happy for him because that's kind of that's an old Aaron Rodgers type of story. But I think it's interesting the fact that you need to know who's around you. They need to have like cards or something because their family members getting confused with girlfriends and people saying hi. And,
Yeah, that was Levis's sister, I think.
Yeah, I'm like,
Everyone thought
what,
was-
dude? I don't know what it was. I'm just saying it gets a little uncomfortable when there are pats on the butts of people, and I'm just saying.
So I love the whole green room scene because every year it's somebody.
Yeah.
And like the NFL knows it's going to be somebody, and that's the guy you're looking for.
You're absolutely right. What I'm confused by is this new trend of guys wearing 2 suits at the same time. Did you see Bryce Young's suit? It was 2 suits. He was wearing a double suit with fabric that went down the side of his leg. I've never been a fashionable guy, believe it or not, but
Believe it or not.
what are you doing?
I love the family concept. I love the fact of it. There are a lot of happy moms out there. But you know what's interesting about these guys who are huge individuals crying, hugging Roger Goodell? Like, they get on that stage and every bit of an emotion for the last 20 years or so they play football comes right out, and all of that is just
I know, I
fun to
did
see.
that too. They view him almost like a teammate.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
no,
they
he's
hug
on
him
the
like
other
he's a
side.
family, like he's a family
He's the
member.
enemy.
They don't understand that yet, and I think you bring up a great point. The funniest thing about the NFL draft is this is the last time any of these guys, before they sign with the NFL Players Union, will want to hug and pick up Roger Goodell. And I get it, right? Like, that's the representation of you made it. You have crossed over from, what you work to do to make it as an NFL player. But, it is weird that the NFL Players Union doesn't get a hold of these guys up front and be like, hey, listen, this is not something you want to have on tape 15 years down the road when we're fighting for a new collective
Too
bargaining
late.
agreement.
It's already going to be
Isn't
there.
it like, and then they have all the former players and some of the other in the next round they come out and it's such a show.
I bet there's about 3 injuries Goodell has before he's done for the day.
Yeah, right. Yeah, his back is popped. He pulled a hamstring in and dropped too hard.
No, he's got rib injuries, right?
and he's
From being
not-
hugged too much.
He's not a small man, by the way, and they pick him up like he's just a sack of flour.
Like it or not was brought to you by Sport Clips. Our unfinished business is next.
The Press Box Stat of the Week is being brought to you by McArdle's Restaurant in Fairport. Come home to McArdle's.
And now to Eichel. He floated one.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here in the Rochester Press Box. Our unfinished business is brought to you by the Genesee Brew House, your beer destination since 2012. Visit the gift shop, enjoy a tasting at our pilot brewery, and dine at the pub-style restaurant. The Genesee Brew House. Unfinished business, Pat. Start us.
Last Sunday, I spent my entire day at the Rochester Ice Center in Fairport for the Section 5 Girls Hockey Jamboree. And I bet you're saying, wait a minute, Section 5 doesn't have a girls hockey league. You're right. This is to get it going. My daughter, if you watch the show, you know, she's 12 years old. She's been playing hockey pretty much her whole life. And on Sunday, there were 130 girls just from Section 5 out playing together to show how much interest there would be in a hockey league run by high schools in our area for girls. They have it in Buffalo, Section 6. They have some up in the North Country. They have a team in Skinny Atlas right now. Rochester wouldn't even be close to the first. And here's the best part. It's not a bunch of girls that are learning to play hockey where they'd be out there stumbling around. It's really good hockey. There are 160 girls in Section 5 that have played hockey since they were like this itty-bitty big. Title IX is a thing that's going to have to be considered. But before we even get there, this is something that should be done by the schools. Budgets are going to be voted on coming up in a couple of months. And if you're a parent of an athlete or someone that picked up a sport later in life that wasn't one that was popular for years, whether it's lacrosse or girls flag football or things like that, I ask you, please, talk to your athletic director, talk to the folks in your school. We want to get this done because these girls deserve to play without spending a fortune to have to play outside of school. I, for one, am very excited that my daughter would be just a small part of a potential beginning of Section 5 girls hockey.
Can you please tell me, Memphis, you couldn't wait 2 more months to let Dylan Brooks know he wasn't going to be on the team? You couldn't wait 2 more months until the finals were over and then a nice little quiet little press release. But now the guy who has been labeled as the villain and doesn't like to be seen as the villain by the media is now going to have to pay the price for what happened to the Memphis Grizzlies. Listen, let me first say this. Dylan Brooks is a player in the NBA. That means the 1% of the 1% of the players that make it to the NBA. He's a player that can be a role player on another team, obviously in the future, now that the Memphis Grizzlies said that they have no consideration of bringing him back. Well, I will say this, though. He did play the role of villain. And if you do play the role of villain, you will have to pay the price of playing role of villain. So for Dylan Brooks going forward, understand that you're a professional. You can still play in the NBA. I'm sure you'll get on another NBA team, but maybe not poke the bear of one of the legendary players in the NBA and maybe play a better role of making shots down the stretch when your star is out for a few games due to his injury. He's not the reason why Memphis lost in the series, but he didn't help.
With the completion of the 2023 NFL Draft, I found myself thinking about Matt Ariza, the Punt God. Remember? He was a 6th-round draft pick of the Buffalo Bills a year ago out of San Diego State. He averaged over 51 yards per punt his senior year. Ariza was handed the job by the Bills early in the preseason, had an 82-yard punt in August preseason game. That, to date, is the only highlight of his professional career. Ariza was tied to a year-long investigation of an alleged gang rape of an underage girl while at college. 2 days after the filing of a civil suit became public, the Bills released him. 2 months later, the San Diego District Attorney's Office chose not to pursue the matter. It seems that fewer than a quarter of such cases actually result in charges. That news made fewer headlines. The civil suit is pending. 2 others investigated in that case slipped silently out the side door and back into the shadows. Ariza faced the brunt of the ugly incident alone. He had an opportunity to kick professionally for a team in Tijuana, but eventually declined that offer and opted instead to stay ready in case an NFL team called. So far, none have, and likely won't. There are other punters with less complicated resumes out there. The Punt God's life is ruined. Perhaps it should be. Who's to say? We pick and choose. Other notable athletes that survived similar circumstances have become cultural icons. Lance Armstrong and Alex Rodriguez were both steroid cheats and liars. Armstrong also raised millions for medical research. He's the bad guy. A-Rod is better looking. He's the star. Deshaun Watson was given a pass. Ray Rice wasn't. We pick and choose, and often arbitrarily. If anyone decides to give the Punt God a second chance, Ariza and that team will have some explaining to do. Ultimately, though, we, the pickers and choosers, will decide his fate. That's our Unfinished Business, brought to you by the Genesee Brewhouse, and that is our show. Gentlemen, go Amerks, by the way, too.
NBA is like Survivor right now. I don't know who's going to survive.
Jimmy Butler always survives. That's who survives. You pick Jimmy Butler.
All right. Thanks for watching our show. We'll see you again next week on the Rochester Press Box.
Not against my Knicks.
Like, I know I don't want to rain on your parade.